So our two readings this evening come from the 7th chapter of Matthew, just like last week, and then a supplemental reading from 1 John, the 3rd chapter. Jesus said, "Ask and it will be given to you, search and you will find, knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks, the door will be opened. Is there anyone among you, if your child asked for bread, would give a stone, or if the child asked for a fish, would give a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Little children, let us love not in word or speech, but in deed and truth. And by this we will know that we are from the truth and will reassure our hearts before him whenever our hearts condemn us. For God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. Beloved, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have boldness before God and receive from him whatever we ask, because we obey his commandments and do what pleases him. And this is his commandment, that we should believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another, just as he has commanded us. All who obey his commandments abide in him, and he abides in them. And by this we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit he has given us." So I want you to think back for a moment. You're a child sitting down with a pencil and a piece of paper, and you're going to write your letter to Santa Claus. You know exactly what you want. You spell it out in careful detail, the specific toy, maybe even the color. For you, maybe it was a blonde Barbie doll or a Red Ryder BB gun, or the Lego Technic airplane kit, model number 42198. Now, for the youth of today, often this looks like an Amazon wish list, where they can ask for the popular new shoes. As stylish as they are, they can specify the size, the color, the matching outfit, down to the very last detail, as they would call it, the perfect drip. And then you wait with great expectation, confident that if you asked just the right way, your gift would appear exactly as you asked under the Christmas tree. And sometimes when Christmas rolls around, you get a brunette Cabbage Patch doll, a youth-size .22 long rifle, or your dad takes you for a ride in a Piper Cub airplane. And you're either let down or flat out angry. Well, sadly, sometimes we bring that same energy to prayer. We come to God with our carefully curated and composed list, the specific job, the cool and exciting thing, the particular outcome we have in mind, and we wait, expecting God to deliver exactly what we asked for, as if the divine is nothing but Aladdin's genie. Who here has ever prayed for a hyper-specific outcome? I know I have. Lord, help me get this promotion at work so I can become the glass shop supervisor, train 2 apprentices, and let me become the quality assurance manager over all of the R&D facilities nationwide. Maybe it sounds like this. Lord, if it be your will, I, a 23-year-old single person, could do so much for the world if I had the money to buy a satin silver fuel-injected 327 cubic inch V8 1963 split-window Corvette with the optional 4-speed manual transmission, leather interior, special performance package, 25 original miles, original spark plugs, and the original dealership window still intact. Somebody. Lord, just let me get married, have 7 kids, 4 boys with brown hair and 3 blonde girls, work in a daycare, buy a Lenten stone house, and raise my family in the same small town as my sisters, my mom and dad, and let my kids be friends with my childhood friends' kids. Unfortunately, when our prayers get that specific and the answers end up looking not quite like what we expected, we can find ourselves wondering, did God hear us? Does God care? Why didn't this work out? Well, tonight, I want to offer you some comfort in the midst of those questions, because the truth is, God always hears, and God always answers. But the answer doesn't always look the way we imagined. And that, dear friends, is not a failure of prayer. It's actually the grace of a God who loves us far too much to simply be our order taker. It also might just be a lesson on how we should pray when we find ourselves feeling the need to ask our God for stuff. In our Matthew segment, Jesus says, "Ask and it will be given you, search and you will find, for everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds." But he follows that up with, if you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give to those who ask? Now, to me, that's the interesting follow-up, because Jesus is not promising that God will deliver exactly what's on our list. He's promising something a little better. That God, who is infinitely wiser and more loving than any earthly parent, will give us good things. Not always the things we think are good, not always the things we have carefully planned, but the things that are genuinely, truly, and deeply good for us. As a parent, I certainly have not ever given my children everything that they have ever asked for, because sometimes the most loving thing a parent can say is not that, or not now, or, I have something better in mind. And if that is true for us perfectly imperfect human parents, how much more must that be true of the God who formed us, knows us completely, and loves us beyond all measure? The author of 1 John deepens this picture even more. They point out, for God is greater than our hearts and knows everything. God is greater than our hearts, and the divine knows everything. When our hearts are heavy with doubt, when we wonder if our prayers are landing at all, 1 John reminds us that God is greater than those questions. God's not limited by our confusion or our fear. God knows everything, and because of that, God is not simply responding to the surface of our prayers. God is responding to the deepest need of our soul, to the prayer that is underneath our prayer, even if we don't actually know what that is. Because prayer is not a transaction. Rather, it is a relationship that is built on love and trust. It is coming before God, who already knows us completely, and placing ourselves in those faithful hands. There was a time in my life not all that long ago when I was stuck. I had spent years working as a scientific glassblower in corporate America, and I knew that deep down I needed a change. I went to college, I got the engineering degree I frankly was already using, and I pushed myself forward into advancement into management. I also began doing something else. I began praying earnestly and very specifically for this advancement. I was pursuing project management, quality assurance, and personnel management, all these big corporate buzzwords. I had mapped out what the path forward had to look like, and I was asking God to make it happen. And I pushed into that space, and I found not only success, but also that I had skills in those areas. I gave presentations to rooms full of people. I sat in audits. I navigated the differences of opinion between a corporate behemoth and the FDA. I managed staff and organized projects. I managed budgets, and I saw tasks through, helping people take their idea and helping them get to the final result that would work. And y'all, I was good at it. But God had a very different map. After beginning this arc of management, making those first jumps into that world, instead of the next promotion that I was very specifically praying for, God rather abruptly led me away from that career altogether. And I'll tell you, at the time, it felt like my world had collapsed. But God saw it differently. This job, which I had allowed to begin becoming my personality, this job that I was literally praying for more success in, was destroying me. I had gained a significant amount of weight. My blood pressure was in a constant state of hypertension. My resting heartbeat was over 100 beats per minute. And I was making plans to have 60% of my spine fused because I lived in so much daily pain. Much longer in that job, and I would have left one day on a stretcher. And even with all that toxicity, walking away from what I knew felt more like devastating loss than answered prayer. It felt like ashes. But as Pastor Bob Abrams reminded me at my installation service, God builds temples from ashes. Out of those ashes came seminary. Out of seminary came a call to pastoral leadership, and out of that call, I am standing right here, right now, as your called pastor. I prayed for advancement in one direction. God answered by sending me somewhere I never imagined. God sent me somewhere far more meaningful, far more fulfilling, and far more needed by not only me, but I suspect a community as well. God knew, and God nudged me in a direction that was wiser than anything I had planned for myself. My prayer was heard. My prayer was answered. Not answered in the way that I, or frankly anybody that knew me, really probably expected, but it was answered nonetheless. I suspect that many of you have your own version of that story. Times when you have prayed for one thing and received something entirely unexpected. Moments that felt more like loss than blessing at first, but then slowly, in hindsight, you begin to see the fingerprints of God all over them. As we close out our Wednesday evening time together, after weeks of challenges around how to privately approach your piety, after me telling you what to do, after hopefully making you all just a little uncomfortable in one way or another, I want to leave you with this. God's silence is never absence. If you're sitting here this evening carrying a prayer that you feel is going unanswered, there's a situation that is not resolved, a door that is not opened, a burden that is not yet lifted, know this: God has heard you. God has not forgotten you, and God is not ignoring you. God is right now at work in ways that you may not yet be able to see, shaping an answer that is formed not only by what you asked for, but by what you or those you're praying for truly and deeply need. Sometimes God says yes. Sometimes God says not yet. Sometimes God reminds us that we are asking the wrong question, and sometimes God says, I've got something better. But in every case, God answers with the love of a parent who gives good things to their children. Maybe your employer relocated you across the country, away from your family, and it felt like loss. But 20 years later, your child marries the most wonderful person, and you know that you ended up in the right place at the right time for them to meet. Maybe instead of 7 kids and a life surrounded by your immediate family, God sees fewer children, a healthy distance from your immediate family, a development of your person on your own, new friends in addition to the old, and then a career surrounded by kids that you get to love on, shape, and send out into the world, guided by what you have taught them. Maybe, rather than the fabulous wealth you need to own a $250,000 Corvette, God empowers you to become successful, but then turns your heart to housing homeless vets, and you discover the joy in the rewarding feeling that your efforts give you is worth more than any car could ever have. And maybe, just maybe, you spent time in corporate America to learn how to speak comfortably in front of a room full of people. You learn conflict resolution, personnel management, budgeting, organizing initiatives, and helping people see potential, and then helping them execute a plan so that someday those corporate skills can be used to propel a new congregation into a fantastic new future. When you ask God for something, anything really, be prepared to listen to the world around you, because God just might be whispering a response, suggesting that the thing you're asking for might be your limited view, and that the thing you really need is grander, better, and more beautiful than anything you ever imagined. Or in my case, you might just find out that the Holy Spirit has been shouting with rising exasperation that there is a better role for you, a vocation that will satisfy your soul and present a beautiful situation right when everyone needed it. You're not alone in your waiting. You are held, known, and deeply loved by a God who is greater than your heart and who knows everything. Trust the answer, dear ones, even if you can't see it yet. Because sometimes, when you ask Santa for a toy airplane, he teaches you to fly. Amen.